Here with me, MS Now Justice and Intelligence reporter Ken Delanian, former Biden Justice Department official Anthony Coley on set with me, and former U.S. Attorney and MS Now legal analyst Joyce Vance also here in the studio. Ken, I'm just going to start where we ended this conversation last hour with Congressman Subramaniam, who told me so far Bondi has only faced softball questions at that point from Republicans, but he was also ready to expand on who Bondi was really spending time talking about. I want to play for you just part of that interview.
One thing I would say is I do want to talk to Todd Blanche now. I would like to subpoena Todd Blanche. I'd also like to subpoena Kash Patel as well, just based on what I've heard so far.
She's talking about Kash Patel in that room?
He has come up, yes.
Notable that he's saying that Kash Patel has come up, that Todd Blanche has come up, that those are two people that Bondi seems to be saying, well, I delegated that to Blanche, I delegated that to Kash. What does that signify to you?
Yeah, good morning, Ali. Look, those of us in Washington may have heard the sound of a large bus driving over a large object about an hour ago, and that was Pam Bondi throwing her former deputy Todd Blanche, now the acting attorney general, under that bus, proverbially. Let me just read the statement that came from her in her opening remarks. She said, as the head of a large department with broad responsibilities, I did not lead every aspect of this effort or conduct that document review myself. I delegated oversight of this process to Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. And that's actually been...
Stay with me because this is not just another DOJ scandal. This is Trump's legal machine starting to collapse from the inside. For months, attorneys inside the Department of Justice have been walking away. Prosecutors left. U.S. attorneys' offices started cracking. Career lawyers looked at what Trump's people were demanding and made a choice: protect the law or protect Trump.
Pretty clear for some time. I've been wondering myself why this committee wasn't trying to talk to Todd Blanche instead of Pam Bondi, who in many ways was a figurehead attorney general. Todd Blanche ran a lot of the DOJ while Pam Bondi was the attorney general. But nonetheless, there are some important questions for Pam Bondi. We all remember the moment when she didn't even want to turn around and face some of the Epstein survivors in the congressional hearing. She just handled this whole thing in a very odd way. And of course, we all remember when she said that the Epstein client list was sitting on her desk when there really isn't an Epstein client list. And then she handed out those binders of documents that really didn't contain anything to right-wing influencers. So there are some important questions for her. But I think the more pertinent questions really will be for Todd Blanche. And the biggest questions about the DOJ rollout, this DOJ, it's not really fair to ask why they didn't prosecute particular figures in the Epstein matter. Yeah. Those questions are really better put to Alex Acosta and people who handled this 10 years ago. But you can fairly ask about how they handled the rollout, why the information of victims was exposed, why certain documents pertaining to Trump were held back and then they appeared and then they were withdrawn again, whether there was an effort to protect Donald Trump. All those are fair game, and they will, I'm sure, be asked of very many people in this administration.
And the smart ones ran because they understood something Trump's loyalists keep forgetting. When this blows up, Trump will not save them. He never does. He uses people, push them into danger, and when the law gets too close, he lets them take the fall. That is exactly what is happening now.
Fresh scrutiny is surrounding the Justice Department's handling of the Jeffrey Epstein files after former Attorney General Pam Bondi told congressional investigators that Todd Blanche was responsible for overseeing the document review and release process. During a closed-door interview with the House Oversight Committee, Bondi said she delegated oversight of the Epstein files operation to Blanche, who was then serving as her deputy and is now acting attorney general. Lawmakers have been investigating how sensitive documents were reviewed, redacted, and ultimately released to the public. The controversy stems from allegations that the release process contained significant redaction errors, including concerns that sensitive personal information connected to victims may have been improperly disclosed. Bondi acknowledged mistakes were made, but maintained that the Justice Department acted in good faith and sought to comply with transparency requirements. Democratic lawmakers accuse the Justice Department of failing to fully explain why millions of Epstein-related records remain unreleased. During her testimony, Bondi declined to answer questions concerning President Donald Trump's role in decisions related to the files, citing executive privilege and refusing to discuss internal conversations. The political stakes have grown even higher because President Trump has now nominated Todd Blanche to become the permanent Attorney General. Blanche, a former defense lawyer who represented Trump in several high-profile legal battles, currently serves as acting Attorney General and would require Senate confirmation to take the post permanently. Republicans have largely defended Blanche, arguing that the department has worked to increase transparency surrounding the Epstein investigation. Democrats, however, are demanding additional testimony from senior Justice Department officials and continue to question why large portions of the records remain withheld. The Epstein case remains politically explosive years after the financier's death in federal custody. Questions about victims' records, investigative decisions, and the handling of sensitive documents continue to fuel intense debate in Washington. With Todd Blanche's confirmation battle looming and congressional investigations continuing, the controversy over the Epstein files is likely to remain a major political challenge for the Justice Department in the weeks ahead. President Trump has publicly backed Todd Blanche, describing him as highly capable and expressing confidence in his leadership of the Justice Department. Blanche's nomination is expected to face intense scrutiny when it reaches the Senate for confirmation hearings.
Pam Bondi, Todd Blanche, and the lawyers still defending this mess are not just protecting Trump. They are putting their own careers, their licenses, and their futures on the line for a man who has already left a trail of ruined attorneys behind him. Look at Giuliani. Look at the others who believe loyalty to Trump would make them untouchable. They ended up humiliated, exposed, broke, indicted, disbarred, or destroyed. And now the same pattern is happening again.
She continues to push that back onto the acting AG, Todd Blanche. We asked questions about Ghislaine Maxwell and the transfer. And again, she referred those questions to Todd Blanche in the Bureau of Prisons. So let's be clear, we have many questions for Mr. Blanche.
It was all Todd Blanche's fault, apparently. Blame him. Now, maybe Pam Bondi was just trying to pass the buck, clearly, deflect some blame. But given that Todd Blanche is the guy who is now in charge of the entire Justice Department, Trump probably wasn't thrilled with that answer, which may be why Pam Bondi came out of that hearing trying to deny she ever said it. Because this afternoon, the former Attorney General made time to play keyboard warrior, posting on X, quote, "Not true," in all caps, literally responding to people's posts. But a leaked copy of her opening statement obtained by Amos now reads, quote, "I delegated oversight of this process to Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche." So it seems like Bondi definitely had a lot to say about Todd Blanche's involvement in this whole fiasco. But when it came to her boss, Donald Trump, she apparently had a lot less to say.
I also personally asked the former AG 5 times and 5 different questions about her conversations with President Trump, whether he directed her at any given time on the Epstein files, what he knew, what he asked her to redact or not, and she refused to answer any questions about President Trump.
She was asked specifically about Donald Trump, President Trump's awareness of Epstein's crimes before they became public knowledge. She had the opportunity to say Donald Trump certainly wasn't aware of those crimes. She had the opportunity to say, I know Donald Trump, and if he was aware of those crimes, he would have done something. Instead, she said, I don't know.
The DOJ is being dragged into one controversy after another. Epstein, Doge, Tom Homan, alleged cover-ups, questionable filings, pressure on federal judges, and political protection for Trump's allies. This is not strength, this is panic. Trump knows the walls are closing in, so he needs the DOJ to act like his personal shield. But the problem is simple. The DOJ is not supposed to be Donald Trump's private defense firm. And every lawyer who forgets that may pay the price.
Former Attorney General Pam Bondi, she basically threw Blanche under the bus, then she denied she did that. You were there, did she?
She was the whole time she was spending just talking about how this was Todd Blanche's thing. Todd Blanche was in charge. Ask Todd Blanche. Ask Todd. Ask Todd. Ask Todd. Kash Patel is the other one too. She was referring to the two of them. But clearly she delegated this thing, and Todd Blanche was in charge of a lot, and she took very little responsibility for her action in this. If you look at it, all the bad stuff that's happened in the Epstein saga, Todd Blanche has been the center of it, right? You talk about moving Ghislaine Maxwell to a minimum security prison. You talk about the not release of 2.5 million files. Todd Blanche is in the center of all of this. So it makes sense that she referred to Todd Blanche so much.
Yeah, I mean, the buck ultimately stops with the person running the department. But I mean, to your point, Todd Blanche was involved in all of these major things. It sounds like your senses, but you tell me that, yes, she was trying to pass the buck, but there may have been some truth to it there in terms of who was responsible for what and overseeing what.
Yeah, well, of course, President Trump wants his former personal attorney in charge of the Epstein saga because the president is in the files, right? And so that's why he was so intimately involved. And apparently, he was involved personally in some of the redaction process. That's something we learned. And even people in his office were involved in that process. And so I asked her the simple question, was at any point the department looking for Donald Trump's name before releasing files to see if he was in them? And she said she didn't recall. And all of a sudden, she had memory fog, right?
Well, I mean, the thing about that, and we noted that today as well, is that
Todd Blanche should know better. You do not walk into federal court and act like a judge is beneath you. You do not brush off demands for proof. You do not treat the courtroom like a Trump rally. Federal judges remember everything. The record remembers everything. And when the records turn against you, there is no campaign slogan that can save you.
The DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now.
No, it wasn't. That is one of those moments that lives on in this Epstein saga. Pam Bondi making claims she could not support, later ousted as Attorney General. She was back in Washington, though, and this is a big deal today, going under oath, facing lawmakers' questions under the force of law about Epstein and specifically the Trump DOJ's handling. Now, there was the effort to have this as a more public on-camera hearing, but then she was fired. House Republicans changed the terms. Still, though, useful to get her talking to Congress at all. Here, though, Bondi wouldn't have to answer the questions technically under oath, and the proceedings would not be videotaped, although it's similar to under oath when you speak to Congress because there are consequences if you lie and the DOJ wants to do anything about it. They released her opening statement where she said the DOJ did blunder on redactions, that there were errors. Now, you might be thinking, wait a minute. Is she outing herself? Is Pam Bondi saying she made the errors? No. This is Washington. This predates the Trump era where officials, if they're ever saying something bad happened, they're probably following it up with who's to blame. In her case, she blames her replacement, acting AG Todd Blanche. I delegated oversight over the process to him, she says. And so today was useful in some ways, although House Democrats said that had there been true cooperation and transparency, it could have been far more useful.
Bondi has the same problem. She may think loyalty protects her, but it does not. If investigators prove evidence was buried, if filings were misleading, if Trump's allies were protected while the truth was hidden, then this becomes much bigger than politics. It becomes a legal nightmare, and Trump is at the center of it. That is the real story.
We begin with what many are calling a bombshell investigative report out of the New York Times detailing the long-running issues in the Epstein scandal, which caused an internal freakout at the Trump White House. This reporting is actually through the process that we've sometimes seen before, where journalists who work at an outlet on a daily sort of beat also work on longer form projects and books. And so the reporting is, we should mention, part of an upcoming book by several of the top sort of Trump White House reporters and DC reporters on the beat. And they, in this process, actually say they spoke to over 1,000 sources. So this is more than even just one or two big articles. This is drawing off of all of that, and it reports how the Trump White House officials and administration looked at the Epstein scandal as so serious that top officials, let's take this for the viewers in full so they can read it, top officials were gathering in the White House Situation Room. That is, of course, the secure bunker where classified high-stakes national security matters are discussed. For contrast, it's not a place where you deal with political domestic spin. It's where this historic moment occurred where President Obama and Vice President Biden were tracking, along with the national security team, the ongoing operation to take out and kill Osama bin Laden. That was 2011. That's the Situation Room, at least when used by presidents who take it seriously. The Times, knowing the Trump officials used it to try to gain measure of control over a very different kind of crisis threatening to engulf the presidency. They continue to use the situation for those discussions. The Times reports that by summer 25, the Situation Room itself had become basically inseparable from the Epstein crisis. This is more than a matter of staging. It sort of tells you about the use, abuse, and misplaced priorities, according to critics, of how they dealt with the Epstein crisis. Trump's vice president was the most vocal about releasing the Epstein files, reportedly arguing that even unsubstantiated allegations and anecdotes about Trump should go out. This is interesting because it takes you inside what was this rolling process. The Times reported that if the administration published them first, it would demonstrate good faith. It would take the oxygen out of the conspiracy theories, they thought. Now, that tidbit could be significant considering how Trump's top DOJ official was flip-flopping over the files released. Bondi was saying this a month after taking office.
Trump is not just fighting cases anymore. He is turning the people around him into defendants, witnesses, targets, and liabilities. Every time he demands loyalty, someone else risks their law license. Every time he screams witch hunt, another lawyer has to sign their name to the mess. Every time he tries to escape accountability, someone else gets pulled closer to the fire. That is why attorneys are living. They see what is coming. They know that when the hearings begin, when the subpoenas land, when Democrats regain investigative power, when state officials reopen the files, Trump's promises will mean nothing. A pardon cannot save a law license. It cannot erase a false statement to a court. It cannot stop state investigations. It cannot restore credibility once a federal judge decides you cannot be trusted. And that is why this moment is so dangerous for Trump, because his entire defense strategy depends on other people risking everything for him. But the more pressure builds, the more people will start asking the question Giuliani should have asked years ago.
But that's the question. Who really cares about the seriousness of the issue and who just tried to use and abuse it? A White House spokesperson telling the Times Trump's claims that he was innocent in Epstein matters, that's long been the case, that they've always said that. President Trump, they say, has done more for Epstein's victims than anyone before him. Fact check, false. Now, I will tell you that prior administrations in both parties also failed transparency and the victims. That's according to what we've learned in our reporting, and we've heard many victims and their advocates say that. So if you're looking at this from a party standpoint, both parties have overseen DOJ and FBI during periods that have failed the victims. But the upside-down claim that this one was better is completely false and something that kind of a lot of people agree on. I mean, I just showed you Rogan, Tucker, Megan, survivors, experts. Nobody thinks they've done a good job on this. As for those in Trump's corner, the Times reports that by late summer, it was apparent to the president's aides that the Epstein saga was not the same as the countless other crises they'd weathered to their great surprise and disquiet. Quote, Trump's old tricks of deflection and denial were not working. Didn't work then. Didn't work until today. And while Trump and Vance had hoped that when the stuff finally came out, even over Donald Trump's opposition, and when Congress made them release it, that by then it would be a bad news cycle and eventually go away. And yet here we are today discussing not only this exhaustive account from the Times, but the witnesses that have come forward yesterday, Epstein's longtime secretary, and today, Bill Gates, shows that Congress, even on a bipartisan basis, continues to pull the threads on this massive.
Why am I destroying my life for Donald Trump? That is the question that terrifies him. Because once Trump's own lawyers, allies, and DOJ loyalists start protecting themselves, the whole machine breaks. The cover-ups crack, the documents surface, the witnesses talk, the paper trail comes alive. Trump built his power on fear, but now fear is moving in another direction. His people are afraid of judges, afraid of subpoenas, afraid of ethnic boards, afraid of state prosecutors, afraid of their signatures, their filings, and their loyalty will become evidence against them. And Trump cannot stop that.
What the DOJ does, and you know this better than I do, is so fundamental to the backbone of the country, right?
Yeah.
The rule of law versus the rule of men. Can Americans trust the criminal justice system right now and what's coming out of the DOJ?
I don't know if we can trust what's coming out of the Department of Justice right now. And that pains me to say that as someone who spent the majority of my career as a prosecutor, where the work of a prosecutor should be to do justice. Many who have worked as U.S. attorneys, worked for the U.S. Department of Justice, talk openly and rightly about the fact that they should do their work without any fear and not in the interest of favor. And that so clearly is not what is ruling the day there. And when you have an administration and individuals who are manipulating the justice system of America in that way, they best understand that this is not only about something that affects the individuals that they're targeting, this affects all of us who believe that, flawed though it may be, that a justice system is actually supposed to be blind in the way that it does its work, not targeting people because of who they are, or for that matter, what they look like.
He can rage online, attack the courts, blame Democrats, prosecutors, judges, the media, and anyone else. But none of that changed the record. The record is coming. The law is slow, but it is moving. And for Trump, that is the nightmare, because this time the scandal is not just around him. It is inside his own legal defense system. And when that system collapses, it will not just expose Bondi, Blanche, or the DOJ. It will expose Trump.